Hey, good morning, Jacques. How are you?
I'm doing outstanding. I'm talking to Garth Brooks.
Entering his second year as the LSU head football coach.
It was the only way I could get a foot in the door.
Joined by the icon, Kim Mulkey. Hey, Coach, great to see you.
Jacques Talk is sponsored by Cork's Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp and Couillon's Cajun Barbecue.
Well, this is quite a treat. So self-serving, right in my wheelhouse, right in my, first impressions of LSU athletics. The great Ricky Blanton. Ricky, thanks for coming down.
Thank you, man. Good to see you.
One of the most popular and best players in LSU basketball history. Made the All-Century team when they announced that. And now you've been in Baton. You're from Miami, right?
That's right.
Came and never left.
That's right. That's right. And
look,
I was part of that. Bob Broadhead, Bill Arnsbarger, Mike Archer, Skip Bertman, and then the players started coming after that. So I'm in that era. Once the South Florida connection started coming, I came as well. Never looked back. So there's been some good ones from South Florida come to LSU.
Yeah, and your era too. It's like, going to be the old man. It ain't like what it used to be.
That's right.
College basketball in the 80s into the early 90s, and I think they called it Dale Brown's era, or that late 80s into the 90s, they called it the superstar era. When the players you played with, the atmospheres, the teams, it's never been better, I don't think.
Well, I think one of the reasons is guys stuck around back then, right? So you had a lot of teams with guys you knew, guys that were juniors, seniors, teams were a little more mature. So you kind of felt connected because we'd played together, and it just was across the country. I think now it's a little different. Guys play a year, they leave, there's transfer portal. But back then the game was good. The game's still good, but it was just a little different atmosphere because of the experience guys and teams brought to the court.
Yeah, so much I want to talk to you about. I just kind of crossed my mind. What if Ricky Blanton played during the NIL era?
Oh. What
tragedy it would have been like if Miami puts up a bunch of money. Ricky, come back home, and Ricky Blanton's in the transfer portal. Oh, no, But you were at LSU. You lost the whole year because of a knee injury.
Correct.
So you were here 5 years total?
Correct.
Yeah, and never left and became, when you say Ricky Blanton, people think LSU basketball at its core, blue collar, hustler, low ego. Is that accurate?
Yeah. You have to be, right. The game's humbling enough, right? So you can't walk around because the game will put you in your place quick. You learn it as a young player, as an athlete. So just go out and do your job, do your work. I was a product of 5 years, which means I was able to grow and able to develop and get better. And two, I played on some good teams, right? I played with some good players. I think I tell all these young kids, it's great to have the stats, the numbers, but if your team's not being successful, people kind of have a tendency not to pay attention to that. When you have a good team with good players, good coaches, and you win, people remember that. And I'm a product of being on some good teams with some good players and some good coaches.
I wanted you to take us all through that. When's the first time you meet Dale Brown?
My junior year in high school. I met him. He came to our house, came down to Miami. Got to remember, my dad and my family's friends with Coach Bertman. So soon after Coach Brown comes to my house and does an in-house visit, Coach Bertman shows up about 2 months later, still coming back to Miami to visit his mom and his family. So I was lucky. I had Coach Brown recruit me, and I had Coach Bertman recruit me. And Coach Bertman was recruiting me to come to LSU to be a part of the basketball team. But it was a pretty impressive duo to come in my house, I must say.
Ooh, Ricky Blanton. This guy, you got to get him, Coach. Ooh.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What were your impressions of Dale Brown when you met him? And Ron and Abernathy
Correct.
He was the big recruiter for Dale, right?
That's right. Well, Coach was in his heyday, so you can only imagine it was quite impressive.
Celebrity visiting.
Yeah, a lot of energy, just nonstop. I think I was more impressed when I came to campus, right? I'm from Miami, big city, just never seen anything like Baton Rouge. So when I came here, you got to remember this was back in 1983, 84, so things were different, but the people were still great. And that's what kind of gravitating to LSU.
Yeah. Well, no internet and not as easy to be a celebrity as it is today, right? I mean, you what do you have, 3 channels?
Maybe 4, yeah.
Maybe,
maybe 4. Yeah.
I remember when we went to cable, we got 12. I was like, whoa, yeah. Got this thing called CNN and TBS and ESPN, but he was a guy that you had seen on TV, Dale Brown.
Correct.
You know, this is a nationally known figure.
Oh yeah, you remember they were the Final Four in '81. You know, so I followed basketball, and so they were a national program even back then. Maybe not as the brand wasn't as big as it is now, but LSU basketball still had a place in the basketball realm collegiately.
So when Dale's talking to you, you immediately get the sense I'll run through a brick wall for this guy.
Maybe, but just never seen anything like it. So I was a little mixed emotion here. What is this, right? And then soon after that, yes, that's the feeling. But initially it was like, wow, just a lot of energy, very intelligent, but not so sure. But it was very impressive.
Yeah. Did you consider anybody else?
Oh, yeah. Out of high school, I visited Michigan, Villanova, Missouri, Florida. Those were my 5 visits, and then had some unofficial. So, I was fortunate enough to have some scholarship offers besides LSU. But when I came here, I kind of knew this is where I wanted to be.
So it's your sophomore year that you go to the Final Four.
Correct.
The spring of 86, 85 into 86. This, for the longest time, I think until George Mason made it to the Final Four in Indianapolis with LSU in 2006, was the lowest seeded team to ever reach the Final Four.
Correct.
What were your memories of that?
Oh, well, it was the whole year was just, if you look back and the whole year, we had so many issues and so much adversity. It's easy to look at the finish line with the Final Four, which was great. But I remember just all of us just hanging in there, right? We didn't have a great SEC season. We had a lot of injuries. We had the whole chicken pox issue. But what I do remember is the one thing that stands out, Kentucky had beaten us 3 times prior to us playing in the regional final. And it was just our time. And the 2 of the 3 times they beat us was kind of on a last-minute play with a play within the last minute. So I remember us winning in the Omni. And that was kind of okay, great. And then we go to Dallas, and like everybody, hey, we're on our way. We're going to a national championship, and then boom, we get popped by Louisville, and the air just gets popped out of the balloon real quick. But it was a great year, and it was amazing to me, Jack, because I had never been to the Final Four. And I think you talk about NIL now, but I think about, man, what if all the media was covering us the way they cover it now? I mean, it was good, but I look at the Final Four coverage now, and I'm like, wow, this is unbelievable. So that Final Four experience is just pretty good. And, playing with guys like John Williams, he was a special player back then. He ends up getting hurt. But, he was top 2-3 player in the country that year at 6'8", 240, and can do everything. I had to play out of position. I got thrown into the center position because of injuries and other issues.
You had to put on weight, right?
Yeah, and it was, but to be on the floor and to play is what every young guy wants to do. So it kind of jump started my next 2 years at LSU. Actually, I got hurt, and then I was able to train, get better. I became a perimeter player. Kind of what I came here for, and was able to shoot the 3 ball a lot my junior and senior year and get drafted. So that Final Four just gave me a whole new outlook on what I wanted to do as a collegiate player.
Well, it was one of the great visuals in LSU history. You're doing this, right? After the bucket against Kentucky that kind of put it away, or pulled away there at the end.
Yeah.
And back then, like the women today, you could play on your home court.
Correct.
In the first 2 rounds of the tournament, which that had to be one of the most exciting, 48, 72 hours in LSU history when you beat Purdue and Memphis State back-to-back, right?
Yeah. And I will tell you, a lot of people don't remember this. Not only that, we had the press conference at Memphis State down in the dungeon. That's where they held the press conference because there were so many people here from the press. And you could still hear the people upstairs in the PMAC cheering and just going nuts after Anthony Wilson made the putback. But yeah, I think that NCAA tournament was one of the reasons they didn't allow it anymore. Gene Cady threw a big fit at Purdue, so I think soon after that, they kind of stopped letting you have it on campus.
Yeah, this is unfair. They got 14,000 people in here screaming against us. Was that? I mean, were there any visiting fans, or was just pretty much all LSU fans in there?
Pretty much. I would, when you're out there playing, you kind of dialed into what you. But you can hear it, and it was obviously all LSU fans.
Yeah, 86, the first game against Purdue, a double overtime game, right?
Lucky to win, very lucky to win.
94-87, and then Wilson against Memphis State picks the ball up off the floor pretty much in one motion, throws it up and in.
That's right. And we were all scrambling for it, and obviously the right guy got the ball. but we all wanted to get our hands on it to make that shot. But luckily, he got it because he was one of our best shooters.
And then Dale Brown just sprinted through the tunnel like this, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I remember that shot. They'd always play that shot on inside LSU basketball or whatever. See, I didn't watch those teams in real time. My first memories of watching you were, let's see, you were hurt in 86, 87. That team made it to the Elite Eight.
Correct. Lost to Indiana in the
Were you on the bench or you weren't there?
No, I wasn't traveling back then, so I was rehabbing, trying to get back as soon as I could.
Okay, I was going to ask you if you were ever around Bobby Knight and what that was like, but you weren't.
I was not.
Weren't there. Boy, that was a heartbreaker. I remember I wasn't watching. I remember I came home and I could hear my dad shout from the other room because I think there was like a layup y'all didn't make and some free throws, and it was right there. And the Final Four was in New Orleans that year.
Correct.
So,
and Indiana wins. Keith Smart from McKinley High hits the shot so they can win it. So a lot of Louisiana connection at that Final Four, even though LSU didn't go, with Keith Smart having such a good career at Indiana.
Yeah. So you're with Jose Vargas and company. That's your junior year.
Correct.
And y'all kind of skated into the tournament. It was like kind of bubble.
That's
you had
right.
16 wins or so. Or,
That's right.
I mean, you played a murderous schedule.
That's right.
Back then. But you lost to Georgetown on a buzzer beater,
That's
I think.
right. Charles Smith. Yeah. Beat us in Hartford, Connecticut.
Yeah.
Good memory there, buddy. Good research. Look, guys like me, that I can replay that over and over, both the good and the bad. But yeah, it was a heartbreaker because it was kind of a, he makes that maybe 1 out of 50 times when he shoots it, and he happened to make it that day.
Was it a bank? Did he bank it in or something? I'm trying to remember. A three-pointer?
Yeah, it went in.
Back then you couldn't, and then back then it was like, I remember watching that game, but it was kind of like on a satellite feed from somewhere, it wasn't like CBS. You could watch every game on TV. It was a little different back then. Well,
Jefferson Pilot days.
Yeah, good old JP. Well, my memories of you really were Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, his name today, Chris Jackson.
Correct.
The two of you teaming up.
Correct.
88, 89.
Yeah. Exciting
year. And I could talk about Chris Jackson for the next 5 hours. But what were your first impressions of him when you met him?
Yeah, so I remember this vividly too. As a basketball player, there's things that stand out, and then there's things that stand out you wish didn't. We were playing pickup in the summer, right before his freshman year. He came down, and it's kind of got to earn your stripes in pickup, right? Open gym, so the older guys have some seniority, and you pick. And so he came down, and first pickup game, he was out of sight. I mean, just draining jumpers, taking people off the dribble, quick as a cat, and back then he could really get off his feet. After the first day of pickup, we were like, wow. But we didn't have any idea it would be 30 points a game his freshman year. But we were like, wow. And you got to remember back then, guys like Rudy Macklin and Howard Carter, all those guys from the 81 team, they still played pickup. They all came back, and we would go out to Southern and play a little bit. So, Avery Johnson, Kevin Flores, there were guys around here that could play. And Chris Jackson stood out, and we were like, wow. And then you take that first impression all the way through the end of my freshman year, where we unfortunately lose to UTEP in Arizona and a guy named Tim Hardaway and both big guys. But you're like, wow. And he was all as advertised from the start all the way till the finish of my senior year, his freshman year.
You tell me there's pickup games going on with Avery Johnson and Chris Jackson and all these guys?
Sometimes, yeah. Kevin Florent, Bobby Phils. Yeah.
I wish I could jump in a time machine and go back and watch, huh?
Yeah, all that was, that just the Faulkner brothers, all that just kind of organically happened because we just played. Back then open gym and pickup was a part of it. Now there were you had your individual coach or you did your skill work. You went and lifted and conditioned and you played, whether it was Southern or it was down in the dungeon.
Because back then Southern, Ben Jobe,
oh man,
they would run and gun. He was the cool, well-dressed coach, and I think I picked them. I was the only guy that one year in the bracket I picked them to beat Georgia Tech at my high school. And everyone was like, how'd you know that? I was like, I didn't, but they beat Georgia Tech that one year in the tournament. And that basketball had to be special in Baton Rouge back then.
And look, you think about Chris or Mahmoud, you just think about it, a freshman leading the country in scoring, the scoring average being 30 points a game, having 50 on multiple occasions. That's why the PMAC was the way it was, and then you'd walk by him in the quad or at school, and he was 5'10", 5'11", and he'd get out there and he'd be like, wow. It wasn't Pete Maravich, right, because Pete did it over those years. But it was the closest thing anybody around here had probably seen to Pete Maravich from a standpoint of having the ball in his hand, can dribble, make passes, and can shoot the daylights out of it. So it was something special not only to watch but to be a part of.
Pistol Pete before my time. That was my parents' time. I think my mom says she still regrets not going to games to see him play.
That's right.
Back then. But there's been nothing like him.
No.
Mahmoud, CJ, since then. Nobody. I mean, I'll go down a YouTube hole and it's like, oh, I've just watched half an hour of old Chris Jackson highlights on the between the legs dribble and the pull up was so like it was like one motion instantaneous and just nothing but bottom of the net. I haven't seen anything like it since.
Yeah. Well, and I spent a year and a half in the NBA, mostly on the bench, didn't play much, but I've been around all those guys. And for his size, there's not many in the NBA that I've seen either. Now, guys like Michael and LeBron and all those guys, but you're talking about 5'11", maybe 160.
Yeah.
And it was and it was just didn't do it in the game. Every day in practice, he could. It was a gift, and he did it every single day. He put a basketball in his hand.
Yeah, it was at his 7th game of his freshman year, the 53 at Florida.
That's right.
I remember watching that on a little TV on ESPN, and like, who is this guy? It's just like. And I think it was Rafferty was doing the onions. That guy.
Right.
He was just in amazement. Like, what are we watching?
Well, how about this? And I remember, I had 19 in the first half. I ended up with 26. That means I scored 7 points in the second half. To give you an idea how much he scored in the second half, he put on a show, just play after play after play. But you think about it. 50. He had 50 at Ole Miss. He had 50 against Tennessee. I mean, it was just. It's pretty hard to get 50 points in a 40-minute game, and they know you're going to shoot. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
I told him this. I had heard stories about there were bars that would do drink specials. Like,
oh, wow.
Chris Jackson scores over 30,
Yeah.
Beer is this price or whatever. And he maybe makes it to 50, which he did. Was he just a relentless worker? Did he just shoot and shoot and shoot, or what was it? Or God-given ability, obviously.
Yeah, I think it's a combination. But some of those guys, I was fortunate enough to be with Michael Jordan for a half a season in preseason when I played in Chicago for a little bit. Those guys just have a different level of skill, right? And CJ had that skill. Michael had that skill. And they have some gifts physically, too. I mean, Chris was quick and can jump. Michael had it all at 6'5", 6'6". But it's a little bit, but mainly it's the gift they have, and then they apply it and they work at it. But it's pretty special. I feel lucky to be around Chris, and then spending a little time around Michael, and in my days in Phoenix with Tom Chambers, Kevin Johnson. But to be at a practice with Michael Jordan, and then to be at a practice with Chris Jackson at the collegiate level and play with John Williams. Feel very blessed to be around those guys at that level that are special talents.
He's just so smooth. I mean, outside, his layups, his cuts, his everything he did. And not to take you down a dangerous path, but the NBA thing, you think he got blackballed? I mean, a lot of people feel like his career was really pulled out from under him.
Yeah, it was unfortunate what happened, right? Just because there were other things that impacted his basketball, right? I think if it was just basketball, it would have been smooth sailing. He would have gone the way, a different path for his career. I mean, you look at his numbers in the NBA, they're pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But it just didn't get to where possibly could have gone.
Yeah. I remember watching, the only reason I was watching, I think Denver was the 8 seed, and they beat the 1 seed. I can't remember who the 1 was. Seattle. And I think he changed his name at that point, I think.
Correct.
And he was a big reason why. I mean, he was up to about 20 points a game or something like that. And his free throw shooting, he was like 93% or something like that in the league.
Well, you think about it. So you talk about the 86 Final Four team, and then you talk about our 88, 89 team, right? And we didn't go to the Final Four, but, we had a heck of a year. When you think everything considered, we beat Georgetown in the Dome. We had a lot of success. So it just goes back to, every team's different. And I tell all young players, right, there's no guarantees when the season starts. You can have all the rankings you want, or you're not going to have any rankings. You kind of have to come together and put it together through the course of the season. You see it in high school sports all the time. You see it in college sports. You see it in pro sports. That's why I said I've been very lucky to play with good players, good teams. We made the tournament every year I was here.
Yeah.
I feel proud of that because of the guys I played with and the coaches. But not everybody can say, hey, I went to 4 consecutive NCAA tournaments. Some were good, some were bad, but that's just a product of kind of the teams coming together at all levels. And it can happen to any group.
Well, when you played, I feel like regular season games, there were some that just carried so much weight, like they almost felt like football wins. You know, you only play 11, 12 football games, and the Georgetown game was one of them. And you're in the Superdome. What is it like to go on a court in front of 66,000 people in a dome? Because I hear like musicians sometimes talk about, you know, I'd rather play 10,000 than 60, 70. It kind of freaks me out, and it's weird. What's it like to play in the dome in front of that many people?
Yeah, the whole surrounding's different, right? You've been to plenty of college arenas. They're quaint, if you will, right? I mean, they're on top of you. You're there. You feel like, okay, everyone's focused. There, you feel like a little ant, right? You're just going around, but you can kind of get lost in it. But in a good way, right? Because all that just kind of goes away and you're focused on this, which it should be all the time. But it's hard when you're in the student section and they're from here to the monitor right on you. Everybody's so far away. But it's really neat. It's for me to be a part of that at the time, the largest crowd to see a college basketball game. That was pretty neat. So I'm glad Coach did that, and to get all the Georgetown team here to play us.
Georgetown was number 2 in the country. They had Dikembe Mutombo and Alonzo Mourning on the team. The great John Thompson, the late John Thompson's coaching them.
That's right.
Dale Brown, Chris Jackson, a freshman. Wayne Sims. I can't believe Wayne Sims is gone. That's a tragic thing, and of course what happened with his son. God bless his widow. She's had more to deal with than anybody could ever deal with. But I remember that game kind of being his finest hour. I think he scored 20 points in the first half. They were leaving him open around the free throw line, and he was just knocking them down.
Yeah, that year we ended up beating Georgetown. We also beat UNLV in the PMAC. They were a ranked team as well. So, the team was really good. The draw in the tournament wasn't so good for us in the NCAA tournament. We didn't go as far as we wanted to, but we had a really good year. We didn't win the SEC championship. Florida beat us late in the season to win it, and then we lost at Ole Miss. But we were 1, 2, or 3 in the SEC.
Well, you're playing ranked teams, like you said. It's exciting. There's star players. You're not just feasting on cupcakes.
Yeah,
you're playing an exciting schedule, exciting brand of basketball. Chris Jackson, oh my God, and all this stuff. It's just different.
Yeah, and I give Coach Brown a lot of credit because we always, we played North Carolina, we played Syracuse, we played. Coach never shied away. We had anywhere from 4 to 6 non-conference games that were against top 25 opponents. That was kind of a big recruiting tool for him as well. He said, look, come here, we're going to play. We're going to play. And back then, some of the people watching may not remember, 10 schools in the league. You played home and home with everybody. You had 18 league games. You played everybody home and home. You didn't have to worry about Kentucky coming here every year, or you going to Georgia every 4 years. You went every year. So you talk about that's an 18-game slate plus 5 non-conference. 23, 24 of your 32 are high quality, to your point.
The end of that game, they triple-teamed Chris.
Yeah.
They had 3 guys on him.
That's right.
And he gets it. It's Russell Grant that shoots the pass, you tell me today. Definitely a pass, not an air ball.
That's right.
A pass. I can imagine what's going through his mind is 66,000 people are watching him as he's wide open with a chance to win the game there. But so what happened? The ball falls into your hands as a scrum, and you put it back in. And
I tell everybody in that situation, truly better to be lucky than good. I mean, it bounced I had to jump a little back and shoot it over Mourning, but that's not any guy who played basketball. That's nothing unusual where you got to kind of put a little more arc on it and get it over a 6'9", 6'10" guy. But that's what happened. It bounced, put it up, better lucky than good. We win, place goes nuts. Leaving the dome was quite interesting. People were still out. And when you leave the dome, you come out. People were slamming, knocking on the bus. It was close to when we came back from the Final Four. Everybody at the airport, leaving the dome after the Georgetown win was pretty much probably the second best experience.
Yeah, it was amazing. I was on the Milton basketball team. We were in some tournament, and I'm like, we get in the car, and I've got a crackling radio, a 1986 little Nissan pickup truck, listening to the great Jim Hawthorne, Ricky Blanton, and it's like they win. It's like today, and I had a VHS copy of that tape. A friend of my parents had recorded it, and I would watch it all the time. That game that day. Just to think, they put 66,000 people to watch a regular season basketball game in the Superdome.
Yeah, and Coach Brown and LSU, they worked hard at that, right? They wanted that to be the biggest crowd to ever see a college game. And I think they may have exceeded that back when they played Notre Dame a couple of years after that. But that was a big to-do for Coach Brown.
Well, I just watched this Netflix documentary on Vince McMahon, the WWE guy.
Right.
Dale Brown and Vince, a lot different in some ways, but both that brilliant marketing mind of getting customers and knowing what hits buttons, and let's do this and let's do that. Let's put this in the script. This will work.
Yeah. Well, you think about it, and you and I both hear the stories about passing out nets and going around the state and when he got here, but he created it, and there was some stability to it, right? When you think about 10, 11 straight years in the NCAA tournament, I was part of 4 of them, but other guys, there was some stability to it. So, that's hard to do, and I think it's getting harder every year now to have some sort of consistency in college athletics for all the reasons we know why. But back then, even to do it says a lot about Coach Brown.
Yeah. Well, and you talk about Bertman. It's the same thing, right? I mean, marketing, getting your players connected with the community, making them go stand on the corner to hand out schedules, that type of thing. Now, when you got there, Dale had started in the 70s with that.
That's right.
And Bertman started in 83, 84.
That's right.
So,
and I know my family, we know Coach Bertman from being the assistant coach to Ron Frazier at the University of Miami and being the pitching coach. So my family, I've known Coach Bertman since I was 5 years old. My dad coached against Coach Bertman in American Legion, which would now be travel ball. But I was a bad boy, so we've known him. So you're right, you come here, he takes on a whole new role, and who would have thought what he became and what he did, one of the greatest baseball coaches ever collegiately.
Yeah, I just love him talking about when he first went to an LSU baseball game. He said, the people sat there like this. Nobody made any noise. All you heard was birds and chirping, and the PA system was broken, couldn't hear anything, and look what it is today.
It's awesome.
Big deal. So, and then later in the year, like you said, you play in UNLV in the PMAC, and it's Jerry Tarkanian chewing on his towel. They had Larry Johnson wasn't on that. Was he on that team?
Stacey Augman, Greg Anthony.
Greg Anthony. Okay, all right. Because they came back the next year and played that amazing game with Shaq and
That's right.
Stanley Roberts and Chris Jackson and all that. But that was an amazing game. Chris on the last. So they missed a free throw, and the ball's out of bounds, and CJ just kind of throws it back in.
That's right.
And then you're down the corner. Sims throws you?
No, La Mouton.
La Mouton.
Gets into La Mouton. Another guy, plays some basketball, ends up in the big leagues. How about that story? Lyle has the wherewithal to pitch ahead, and I'm standing in the corner. And if I've taken that shot once, Jock, in the PMAC, where I made it in the corner, I've taken it 10,000 times. That was truly a product of being in that spot that you shoot after practice, you shoot during practice, you shoot in the off season, and just hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have shot a 3. Probably should have gone in and tried to tie the game. But at that moment, you're just like, hey, this is here. It's presented itself, and made the shot, and it was a lot of fun after that.
It was awesome. Lyle Mouton from St. Thomas More High School in Lafayette. Danny Broussard is going into the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. He's basically been the only coach they've ever had. His older brother, Ricky, was the coach for 1 year at St. Thomas More. Danny's been the coach since like 83 or something like that. That's right. But Lyle, pretty good baseball player too. Smacked a lot of home runs for Skip Bertman.
Yeah. Made a living out of it, right? Played some big leagues. Was able to make a living a while out of baseball. So, we didn't know when we were playing basketball at that time. We'd heard he was pretty good, but he turned out to be quite a baseball player.
I remember reading Dale Brown's book, Don't Count Me Out.
Correct.
When I was a kid, and a lot of that book was about he was just on Lyle Mouton hard,
right. That's
like. Kind of sensed he was maybe from not a rich family, but kind of a little not what Dale Brown came from, so to speak, and was just always on him. I mean, you remember that?
Oh, yeah. Well, I was the recipient of that, too, a little bit later on, right? I mean, every coach has a guy they know they can get on and try to motivate the team. And for a couple of years, I was that guy that every day, right? And so you just kind of keep trucking on even though it happens. But Lyle had a lot of it that year for sure. Yeah.
I remember real quick Vanderbilt game.
Yes.
Chris from the corner, 3-pointer to win the game in the PMAC.
Right.
Your senior year. He had about that much space to work with.
That's right.
He somehow contorted his body and made the thing too.
Out of inbounds play, right? Popped out to the corner, little handoff. I remember handoff. He turned the corner and boom, and it was great. So. All those memories, it's I tell everybody, I wish all these guys could have the experience I had collegiately and at LSU that play basketball. Would have never thought it was going to be possible. Just went out every day and did the work, and it happened. But I wish all those guys could experience what I experienced at LSU because it was phenomenal.
I remember your your last game as a senior.
Yes.
You were the only senior, I think.
Correct.
So it was like Ricky Blanton night.
Yes.
And people had, before the days of fat heads and cutouts,
That's right.
they still managed to have like these pictures of Ricky Blanton and we love you, Ricky, and all that. You played Florida, this is when you had villains. Like Dwayne Shinchis was this villain. Like he's this guy with this mullet who was like 7 feet tall and like he was kind of like a Bill Lambier of,
Good analogy. Good analogy.
yeah. Just God, we hate that guy, And I think he passed away.
He did, unfortunately.
Yeah, he got a disease later.
Yeah.
But when he was, you guys came up short. You did not win that night. But I just remember it just being an amazing game. I think Jackson at the buzzer at the first half hit it.
Right.
And he was amazing. You were amazing. It was like one of those shootouts. I think, if they scored 100, you scored like 95 or something. But that was your last game.
Look, what the community did for me my senior night, you can't imagine, right? The Governor Romer back then made a proclamation, Ricky Blanton Day, standing ovation. They had the cutouts. The Advocate was nice enough on the back of the Advocate, had a cutout people put on. I visited University of Florida. I'm a Miami guy. I visited them out of high school. I knew all those guys. So my best friend, Eric Palms, was their manager. I knew they would be ready. I was hoping we would win because that night, you just can't imagine standing in the PMAC looking up and getting a standing ovation from the entire PMAC. I mean, and you're 21 years old, 22 years old.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable what happened that night. Even though we lost the game, everything about senior night was great except the outcome of the game.
Yeah, they just pack it 14,000 every night. We drove over from Lafayette on a school night, to go watch the game and drive back. That's what you did, LSU basketball. Do you wish you had one more year that you could have played with, although it might have been a little too crowded, I don't know, with Shaquille O'Neal, Stanley Roberts, Maurice Williamson, Vernell Singleton. I hadn't brought up Vernell Singleton. My God.
Harold Boudreaux.
Snoopy Band-Aid. Yeah. Harold Boudreaux, who was the player of the year in the state, right?
Yeah,
Mr. Louisiana.
Yeah. Well, yes. The answer to your question is yes, because my senior year, Harold Boudreaux, Maurice Williamson, they were on campus, and Stanley Roberts. They all lived across and next to me in the Broussard. So yes, because we played pickup, we practiced. It would have been nice. It might have been it was too crowded without me.
Right.
It might have been a bit more crowded, but yeah, I wish because we could have kind of just tempered everything and maybe made it work. It was a big adjustment for all those guys. They were coming in, and they were all Americans, and they always had the ball in their hand.
They lacked a Ricky Blanton in terms of veteran presence because Chris was quiet.
That's right.
Shaq was clumsy as a freshman, and he's a freshman. Yeah. And so who's the talker? Who's the leader?
Or let's get some direction, right? It's all the coaching great, but as you know, when you're out there, sometimes it's got in basketball especially, you can go 10 possessions without the coach being able to coach anything. Because of steal, rebound, turnover, missed shot, you keep going. Let's get some direction and some stability. I wish, but I got drafted. I was a second-round pick. I was able to be in the NBA, so I was on to the next step. But yeah, looking back at it, because all those guys are great guys, and I always came back and played pickup with them. But they were good. Who knows what it would have happened? But we might have changed the course a little bit. I like to think, but you don't know if that would have been good enough.
Yeah, that 89-90 team is a fascinating topic. Just the star power on the team. It might have been the most talented team in LSU history. Then go to Final Four, got beat in the second round by a Georgia Tech team who had just as much talent. I mean, back then when they had, what they call that, Lethal Weapon 3? They had Georgia Tech. And
Well, I would say this, Jack. Everybody in LSU basketball history will tell you the 81 team was the most talented team. Hard to argue that. But I'm with you. The next second most talented team is the 89-90. Now, if you compare what they accomplished, 81 wins out.
Yeah.
But player for player, size for size, skill, athleticism, it's hard not to take a big look at the 89-90 team compared to the 81 team.
Yeah, I feel like Rudy Macklin just threw something at me when I said that I said that was the most talented team ever. That was before my time. I didn't watch that 81 team, but obviously they were 31-5. They went to the Final Four, and Rudy got hurt, right?
Yeah,
and
hurt his thumb.
Yeah, and so what's his bad luck with LSU guys? Their star player getting hurt at the Final Four, right?
Yeah, not good.
John Williams, like you said.
That's right.
But yeah, I remember that. I remember old tapes going back and coming back, a musical montage of Kool and the Gang, Celebrate Good Times. You know, that's when that song came out, 80, 81, and people at the airport waiting for the team to come back. And,
That's right. And you still had that's been so long ago. You still had the consolation game back then.
Oh, yeah.
They used to play a consolation game at the Final Four.
That's right.
That is crazy.
Your national championship dreams are over, but you got to play one more game. How do you feel about that?
Yeah. And the guys at LSU didn't feel that good about it either.
That was that whole Ronald Reagan ain't my kin thing that got twisted out of context with Macklin. And Jim Hawthorne said he saw the guy, who's the name of the guy that shot Reagan? They had visited, not to go way off the course here, but the Final Four was in Philadelphia in 81.
Correct.
They went to Washington. I think LSU made a trip to Washington, like to go see sightseeing or whatever.
That's
and
right.
Jim Hawthorne, the voice of the Tiger, said he saw the guy, Hinckley?
Hinckley, yeah. John Hinckley?
That shot Reagan.
Right.
Said he saw him. He had him in a picture or something like the day before it happened. Or,
wow.
And it's just crazy stuff. But, okay, how do I get back on track here?
Yeah.
But yeah, that 89-90 team, you were around Stanley.
Yes.
Stanley's a fascinating topic, too.
Yes.
Because he had so much talent.
Yes.
Right? I mean, and I've talked to him and said, man, if I could have just, got my weight down or whatever. He was much more gifted than Shaq early.
Skill-wise.
Yes.
Correct. Yeah. Well, and look, he had a pretty good NBA career, not by his standards, but by just the average person. But he got hurt. I think even all things that he would share, and maybe he didn't do what he wanted to do physically and get his stuff together, lose his weight. But had he not gotten hurt, he still would have had an 8-10 year career. He just had the injury bug. But there's plenty of nights, if you pull up tape, he had 15-10 in the NBA or 14-6. It's just his body didn't hold up. But he was beautiful around the basket. Like right hand, left hand, jump hook, up and unders, could catch it, could shoot it from the elbow. Plenty skilled. He just the injury bug got him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he admits, he blew a lot of money and, the drugs and alcohol and all that. I mean, he's fessed up to it and he's cleaned it up. And, I see him around and it's sad because I always see him and Wayne appeared to be like
best friends.
They were.
Yeah.
He lost his buddy there.
They were.
Yeah. What do you make of a few more things before I let you go? This current team, Matt McMahon, he's doing his best. I think he's kind of fighting an uphill battle with NIL and trying to get players and it's just not the Dale Brown, throw the magic Dale Brown glitter out and get people. And
That's right.
It's a different game now. I don't know if they care about tradition and Shaq played here and Ben Simmons played here or whoever, #1 draft pick.
That's right. Yeah. Tough blow when Jalen Reed got hurt.
Yeah.
For this season, right? Because that's basically your inside presence. You're going to be your guards are going to have to carry the load the rest of the way. Not to mention it's probably the best the SEC has ever been from a depth standpoint and quality of teams, in my opinion, watching it for 30 years, 40 years. That's what I think. A good guy, hoping he can get it to where it's supposed to be. But I think to your point, maybe those kids don't care about all the past, but I think this day and age you need one of those guys from the past in order to be successful in college basketball. Shaquille O'Neal, Stanley Roberts, Chris Jackson, Rudy Macklin. You need it.
Stromile Swift.
You need a player that can dominate the game to be successful, and then maybe a couple others. I just don't know if they have that player on this roster.
Yeah.
But it's going to be an interesting SEC season because the league is just very, very good.
Yeah. I was talking to John Brady a couple of years ago, and he said you need one pro.
Always.
You got to have one pro.
Always.
And that, early in John Brady's career when he's grinding through the probation and, having to play guys who aren't that great,
Right.
Stromile Swift comes aboard and you go to the Sweet 16. I
Right.
mean, there were some other guys around him, Bashera,
That's right.
Torres Bright.
Jabari Smith.
Jabari, yes.
Yes, yeah. Well, they say to win at the collegiate level, you need more pros than the other team has pros on their roster. So if we have 2 pros and they have 1, we got a better chance of beating them over the course. But you need that guy. And if you look back at all the good LSU teams, they've always had that guy.
Yeah.
They really have. So I'm hoping they get it turned around. But it's hard. You talk about tradition. I'm with you. These kids don't want to hear about this. They don't want to hear about that. Now it's about my opportunity to play and my NIL money. And unfortunately, that's the reality. Now everybody who adjusts and gets it right, great, because the game's still good, right? I mean, old heads will say, hey, too many threes, or they play. Yeah, but people are watching, people are going, people enjoy it. So the game's still good. I think you just got to get the players and the kids now. I don't even know if you need to go on a recruiting trip, right? Maybe I can take a virtual tour online, tell me, we'll have a Zoom call and let me meet everybody. But if the money's right and the playing time's right, I think I don't know that I'd go on an official visit. I'm good. You know,
it's like LSU football. When you go to Tiger Stadium, you want that team to be good. You want them to win. Baseball at the box, whatever. But it's almost like, do I want to do these things to get these players? I mean, they hold your nose like, you mean to tell me that some kid out of high school has got, hey, this is a stick up, you know, extortion.
That's right.
You know, how much money can I get or whatever? And it's like, and then some people say, well, the coaches get paid millions and they can leave. Well, the coaches have kind of proven themselves over time that they're good at their craft.
That's right.
And they're adults. They're in their 50s or 60s or 40s or 30s or whatever. They've proven things, as opposed to a kid out of high school who's still very young and immature probably. Yep. To give them that much money, you might be creating a monster.
Yeah. And I think just from a casual fan, I enjoy going to the games. I enjoy watching the games. I enjoy being around the game. It's not going anywhere. It's not changing. So the NIL's here to stay. The transfer portal is here to stay. So I think people have to adjust, and it's just going to be something new, but it is different. When you look at them, I mean, how many 3 or 4 year starters you're going to have? You know, each year, are you going to have that second year, first year starter, transfer guy? You know, it's just different. It can work, but it is different.
Well, and two, we just talked about your senior day.
That's right.
You were here 5 years.
That's right.
People know you. They connect with you. They have Ricky Blanton in their heart.
That's right.
Here's some guy that played at 3 different schools, and now he's a senior. He played here. He's been here 3 months, and now I'm supposed to get teary-eyed because this is his last home game. It's just –
and he's gone. He won't be here next year. Not only that, right? You see him for 18 home games, and he's gone, right? Yeah. Or 2 years max, and you don't get to see him develop, and you don't get to see him grow. So I think that's a big problem, and I think especially in a town like LSU where your entertainment dollar goes a lot of places. You got football, baseball, basketball, the Saints, the Pelicans. You got a lot. Mm-hmm. So I get it, right? But it's doable. It's just a little more difficult.
What do you think about women's basketball right now? You watching any of this stuff? You watch Kim Mulkey and all that? I mean, you were there when Sue Gunner had the curtain.
That's right.
And I heard the horror story. They used to play double headers.
That's right.
And LSU women played in Tennessee one time, and I think the game's going into overtime. And I'm not going to say who, but maybe a certain AD or somebody else told Sue, you may have to finish this game down in the dungeon because we got a men's game coming up. So you need to get your little piddly women's thing off the floor. They had the curtains down, they had 200 people watching, and now it's entertaining.
Well, let me tell you. So you're right. Dated myself a little bit. Coach Gunner, Donnie Goodson, all that crew. They practiced before us every day, and they came out, and Coach Gunner was great. But the thing that's changed for me is the talent, and no disrespect to the girls that played, but have you seen the talent level from then 30 years ago to now? Girls are really skilled, really athletic. They're big. They can score. They can dribble it. They can pass it. The game has evolved to really, really good quality, and I think it's popular now because of the quality. And they play a good brand. You know, girls aren't playing above the rim. You're not sitting in the stands and a guy saying, well, I don't know if I'll ever be able to do that because I'm 6'1" and he's 6'10", or I got a 20-inch vertical, he's got a 40-inch vertical. I can't play because I can't do that. These girls play below the rim for most of the part. They could all dribble, pass, shoot. They got good skill. They make the extra pass. It's positioning. It's angles. So a lot of people can relate to that because they're not jumping 40 inches off the floor.
Right, and it's what you guys were in the 80s and 90s. Flage is going to play 4 years here.
That's right.
And Angel Reese played, a decent amount of time here. And
right.
Michaela Williams is going to play 4 years here.
You got it.
And hey, I know this team. I know these players. I have a connection. The stars stay.
That's right.
It's unfortunate that they don't get paid in the WNBA, and there's not that desire to go pro early, but the college game benefits.
That's right, because they can make, if not the same or more, NIL money staying at school as opposed to leaving. And I think that's the biggest underlying factor when you look at it, why the girls are sticking around, and it's making the girls' game that much better.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a good thing.
Anything else?
No, it's great, man. Look, I love going down memory lane, and especially, you know, for a lot of these young people or the people that haven't been around, they only know what they know. Sometimes it's good to look back and say things are the way they are now because of what happened in the past, right? So the expectation at LSU, like use LSU basketball, the expectation is pretty high because there's been success in the past, right? We've seen the pro player. We know what he looks like. Get him here. We've seen the teams be successful. So it's good to kind of look back and say, yeah, these were the guys, but all these guys that played all of us, that was part of the foundation for the brand now, right? You look up there, the brand is still, the brand at LSU is off the charts. I wouldn't even say it's national now. It's global. LSU is a global brand. So we just hope, the basketball people, we hope we get it to that point. But even so, just the whole LSU brand is outrageous. And that's a good thing because you're not far away from being successful in anything you do with LSU athletics. You might have a down year. You might not have a year everybody wants, but that can get turned around, and you've seen it just as much as anybody. It can get turned around in 1 year. Now with the portal and NIL, you could be at the bottom to the top. You could be at the top, find yourself in the middle, but it can get turned around really quick.
Well, and that's college football now has created an off season.
Yes.
In terms of, who we're getting or who we lose, and I mean, the fans are still engaged even though their team's not playing now. And, Lane Kiffin on one hand has said, I don't think it's good for the sport for us to turn over 40, 50 players in a year. But at the same point, as Will Wade once told me, these are the rules of engagement. You either get on board or you get left behind. And so Kiffin, at least in that regard, has done a good job of attacking the portal and getting players. Your son, how old is he?
He's a junior in high school.
Junior at Dunham?
Yeah.
What's his name?
Gavin Blanton. He's good basketball player, good baseball player. So we'll watch. But, this day and age, you got to train and work all the time. So he's got a chance. We'll just see what happens. And I got two daughters as well, ninth grader, seventh grader, both athletes, volleyball, basketball players. And so, they know in our house, you train, you work hard, whatever happens. So it's fun. It's fun to be a dad and kind of support them on their journey. We just sit back. We take them everywhere. We give them all the opportunity, and we just try to help them along the way. Yeah,
well, that's awesome. We'll be watching for them, and and the your Tractions of the world, and the place that Greg Stringfellow's got up now. I mean, this wasn't going on 30, 40 years ago.
I tell everybody, and I mean this: if you don't maximize your potential in athletics this day and age, even if you don't go to those facilities with the internet, what's available by fun, if you don't maximize your potential now, kind of shame on you, because you have access, whether it's weights, athleticism, nutrition, skill development, it's everywhere, and you can maximize your potential. And so that's why the kids are so much bigger, stronger, and faster now. I mean, you see, I look at some of these 15-year-olds. Speaking of my son at Dunham, Elijah Havens, he's 15 years old. I don't think I ever saw a kid of that physical stature at 15 when I was growing up. It was just unheard of.
Yeah, I remember when I was anorexic trying to play basketball. My late great uncle Blocker Thornton was telling me I need to lift weights, and of course I'm being a little snot and saying I don't need to lift weights. I'm playing basketball. And he said, "Look at Ricky Blanton."
That's right.
You look at Blanton.
Yeah.
And so you don't think he lifts weights?
That's right.
So how old are you, real quick?
58.
You're knocking on 60. Ricky Blanton knocking on 60. Will you still look?
Well, thank you.
The same?
Good genes. That's all I guess I can tell you. Got to work out a little bit, But
you're a jogger too, right?
Yeah, jogger. No, getting closer to being a walker, probably more than a jogger. Stay away from the weights. That's for you young guys. But yeah, work at it because my kids keep me young as well.
Well, good deal. I love the conversation. Thanks you for coming down and be a part.
Oh, thank you, man. Appreciate it.
The great Ricky Blanton. Thanks for stopping by. Have yourself a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays.